Hi friends, it's Jess with Our Bipolar. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, a little bit about me. I have bipolar 1 and I was diagnosed 24 years ago. And actually what we're going to talk about today is my very first full-blown manic episode, which happened 24 years ago. Before we go right into it, I also wanted to ask for you to please like, subscribe, comment. I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers, which I need a lot more. So if you could please do those things if you like my content, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna talk about my first manic episode. The reason I'm doing this is I think it's really important to educate people about mania, about what can go on during mania, and also I like to do these videos for people who have been diagnosed with bipolar, just so they know they're not alone. Okay, before we get into like the nitty-gritty of what really happened, I wanted to talk about my triggers. So triggers are things that changes usually that are happening that bring out the bipolar in someone. So from what I understand, from all the research that I've seen, bipolar is a genetic disorder, which means it runs in your family. Now, there's no one in my family who I know about who has bipolar. So that doesn't mean that no one had it. You know, in the past, long time ago, bipolar wasn't exactly being diagnosed all that well. There are lots of clues in my family, maybe not lots, but there are a few clues certain people may have had it. It's possible. So triggers are something that could bring it out. And at this time, this was back in 1999, I was a sophomore in college. I had actually 3 triggers that were going on. Any one of these could have brought it out, or all 3. The first one was that my freshman year of college, I had been diagnosed with depression, and I was trying different antidepressants. It definitely seemed suspect, and I think my antidepressant probably played a part in bringing out my bipolar. This is a common thing. The other thing that's going on is, you know, I was in college. I had gone to college. I was at the very beginning of my sophomore year. So I was adjusting to that. I was adjusting to being more of an adult, even though I definitely was not an adult yet. But, you know, I had moved out of my parents' house. I was living on my own for the first time. These were huge changes. And something like that can definitely trigger bipolar. Third thing, which is a bit personal, but I was actually going through therapy that time because I underwent quite a bit childhood trauma. So I was dealing with that. That was something I was speaking about at that time with a therapist, and that definitely could have contributed to the bipolar coming out. So let me get into like more of the story of what actually happened. What happened was, as I said, it was 1999. It was the beginning of my sophomore year. After a year of trying different antidepressants, this antidepressant actually seemed like it was doing something. I don't know that I was feeling great, but I felt like I had more energy. I wasn't sleeping as much. I wasn't as depressed. But I didn't feel like myself. I guess I'll put it that way. So I went back to school in the fall, and it's strange. So I am an introvert. I have a very small group of close friends. I don't make friends easily, but suddenly that's exactly what I was doing. I was becoming what I felt was popular. I was making these new friends, but I was also acting just very different from how I usually do. And that's always a big sign for bipolar. If your personality suddenly changes from one thing to another, that's a big red flag. So what happened was I was suddenly very funny, and I'd like to think of myself, my usual self, as, you know, I usually have like a dry humor, sarcastic, that's my typical personality. But this, I was becoming very like almost gullible. I was, you know, doing and saying things and then realizing I've made a mistake and people would laugh. And I remember one of my good friends, I talked to her about this and I said, you know, I just don't feel like myself. Like I noticed it. And she said, oh no, everyone loves you. They think you're so funny. They think you're so cute. And I was like, yeah, but that's not me. It was just a bit strange to me. Like I felt like I was not comfortable in my own skin because this isn't who I was. And I was doing more shopping. I was typically the type of person who didn't spend a lot of money, and I was suddenly spending more money, but I wouldn't say it was outrageous. I was just doing more shopping than usual. And then something happened. I lived in a dorm, so I shared a room. I had a roommate. And the one night I actually fell out of the top bunk. And I thought, for some reason, I thought that the devil pushed me out of the bunk and was trying to kill me. So yeah, that was not normal for me. Why was I thinking that? I don't know, but I did. I thought that and I believed it. But I also was still kind of with it enough to realize this isn't something I should share with anyone because no one will believe me. Some people, when they talk about mania, people think, one myth is that, oh, you're having so much fun when you're manic. Like you've become this funny person, this social butterfly. Actually, I wasn't really enjoying those things, you know, because I knew it wasn't how I truly am. And you can see how quickly it can turn from being possibly fun to dangerous and scary. And I also, you know, I fell out of a bed from pretty high up. I mean, I could have really hurt myself. I didn't, thankfully, but you know, it was pretty scary, and add in the devil, yeah, that's really scary. So I just go on because I have no idea what bipolar is or that I could be suffering from a mental illness. And I'm just getting less and less sleep at this point. So it's a recipe for disaster. I'm sleeping so much less. I get to the point where I'm not sleeping at all. And one night, I'm trying to sleep. I can't. I don't even feel like I need sleep, which is very common. And sorry, it's a little, it's hard to talk about. I mean, it really is hard to talk about. This is when my life changed completely. So what happened was I kept feeling like I was addicted to water. I kept thinking that because it was like, okay, at this point, I was so thirsty all the time, and I just had this idea like, well, I must be addicted to it if I'm so thirsty all the time. So I got down from the top bunk because my roommate was asleep, or I hope she was asleep, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, which was in our room, kind of like across from the bunk beds. And I was looking at my face in the mirror, and I thought that I could see the bones in my face and that I had x-ray vision. I don't remember everything from this night, but as the night went on, I started to feel very energized, like extremely energized. I don't know another way to really put it, but I convinced myself, I thought that I had, before this, that I had multiple personalities that had just fused into one personality. And that is why I felt this way, like in a way that I had never felt before. I think this was influenced by the book Sybil, which I read in high school, which is a true story of someone who has multiple personalities. So I don't know in what order this happened, but I believe I woke up my roommate, that she didn't just wake up. I woke her up and I told her this about the multiple personalities fusing into one. And from what I remember, she just sort of looked at me Like, I don't even know if she was fully awake or not, but I mean, what do you say to that if someone wakes you up and tells you this kind of information? The poor girl. I also called my dad. It was, I believe, 6 a.m. and I thought, oh, he gets up early, so it's fine. You know, it's fine for me to call him right now, because I was bursting to tell him all of these things that had happened. I told him about the x-ray vision, I told him about the multiple personalities, and I told him about being addicted to water. I should mention, that's important to the story, for you to know that my dad is a therapist. And one of the first things he asked me was, have you been spending money? Which I kind of thought was a strange question, but I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, stop. I'm like, all right. I was thinking like, that, I don't know that that's a problem right now, but okay. And then he proceeded to tell me that he was coming to school to see me. So I was like, okay, I really didn't know why or what was going on. I didn't know that there was a problem, or he perceived there to be a problem. So he is already in his mind thinking like, oh my God, my daughter has bipolar disorder. Luckily, he only lived about an hour away from my college, so he came up like right away. And he was like, you know, before he left, he's like, stay put, stay in your room. I'm like, okay. And he gets there, and what he does immediately is he calls my psychiatrist, since I already have a psychiatrist because I was being treated for depression. And I don't really remember much of their conversation or what I could hear of it from him, but I do remember he must have told her what was going on. And then I remember that the psychiatrist must have said she needs to be admitted to a psych ward of a local hospital. And to which I first realized the gravity of the situation and what's happening, and I start bawling and like protesting, say, please don't take me to a hospital, please don't take, you know. And I remember my dad's being on the phone and saying, do you hear her? Do you hear what she's saying? And I don't know how this all went, but somehow the psychiatrist said I didn't need to go to the hospital. I could stay with my dad in his care. And what she did was, the psychiatrist, she called in some tranquilizers, some sort of tranquilizers, to a pharmacy nearby for me to take, which I did. And my dad and I went to breakfast. I think maybe I had to eat food with them. I don't know. And then my dad took me home. You know, we drove the hour back home. Now, after that, things are very foggy. Very foggy. So the tranquilizers, you know, they finally put me to sleep, but I have all these weird memories of like things that I did. I remember like standing up in the shower. I have no idea what I was doing. I guess my body was trying not to sleep on a medication that is going to force it to happen. So anyway, that was, you know, basically it. After that, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1. I do not remember going to the psychiatrist and receiving the actual diagnosis. I don't remember much. It's hard because even once I was off the tranquilizers, I was put on other medications. I know now that those medications were not helping me and were probably exacerbating the bipolar, and I was on those medications for 8 years. So it's amazing that my life has gone as well as it has. I took time off from school. I took the rest of the semester off. I was supposed to take a year off. That was the plan, at least, that I would need a year off. But I was so bored and I just wanted to go to college. So I went to a different college in my hometown and I finished out. And I actually moved away right after college, and I moved to Charlotte, and I lived there about a year, and then I moved to DC, and I lived there for about 13 years. It's amazing to me that I moved away and did relatively well. You know, I had a lot of episodes in those 8 years, and I just sort of had to ride it out. I mean, I had rapid cycling, so I was having, you know, a lot of ups and downs. The psychosis I had in that first episode with hallucinating, seeing things, hearing things, believing things that weren't true. I have had psychosis since then, but not as much or like to that extent. I have been lucky with that part. But yeah, that's what happened. And I'm very, very lucky that now you know, for many years I've been on very good meds that work for me, have a great psychiatrist. But this is when it all started, 24 years ago. And I truly feel like I've lived 2 different lives. I feel like I lived one life up until when I was 19. Like all through high school, I was one person. And then since then, I'm a different person. It has been such a wild ride. I'm so happy that all of the really great things in my life happened in this second life. You know, meeting my husband, having my daughter, all those things, getting my degree. So I'm very, very lucky. But if you're out there, if you have bipolar or you think you might, I hope this video has helped you. I hope if you are just here to learn about mania, that you've learned something. Lots of people have problems, and we have to all work together and live together. All right, well, thank you for being here. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.